Around 4 months ago, I created a video on the PS4 Pro when the details were a little scarce. In fact, it was codenamed the Neo back then, and we were relying on rumoured specs and details to base our opinion. Now though, as of yesterday, Sony have officially revealed the upgraded PlayStation 4, and it's called the PS4 Pro. Not sure about the name, but I guess we can live with it. It also turns out that all of the rumoured info and specs from around 4 months ago were actually quite accurate. Let's first get stuck into the reveal last night and what was shown before we talk about the console in general. First off, this isn't a new console, so to speak. Think of it as just another version of the PS4. All of your PS4 games will run on either version, and there isn't going to be a situation where one game is made for the Pro version and not for the vanilla PS4. It's an upgrade. We also got to see what it looks like. It actually looks a lot like the standard PS4 with just another tier on top of it, normal PS4, PS4 Pro. It's not small, that's for sure. It looked even bigger when they showed it off because it was stood next to the also new PS4 Slim model. It kind of reminded me of the size of the original PS3, if you remember that hulking beast. Of course, this had to happen. You can't just expect better performance without some sort of a size increase, but I think if you buy this version, you're accepting that it will be a lot bigger and it's going to take up more space in your cabinet or shelf. It's going to set you back $399 in the US and around £349 in the UK when it releases in November. That's right, it actually releases in literally a few months, not long to wait then. So all in all, what's the point? Why are Sony doing this? Well, the main reason, and one of their biggest selling points, is 4K gaming. The PS4 Pro has been born to enable the PlayStation platform to have enough power to play games in 4K. That's the goal. It's quite a jump really when you consider that most new games on the current PS4 can't even manage 1080p at 60 FPS, apart from a few exceptions. Look at Battlefront, a recent game visually stunning, well optimised, but even that could only manage 900p on the PS4, and we're now led to believe that an upgraded PlayStation 4 is going to be running games at 4K resolutions. Well, yes and sort of no. Will there be native 4K games running on the PS4? Yes, there will, with compromises, more on that later, but in reality most of the games are going to be upscaled. It's a little unfair though to just say upscaled and not talk about how they go around it, because for all intents and purposes it's a fantastic system, and press who were at the Sony event last night have said that in person the visual fidelity on a 4K screen was stunning and a big upgrade compared to the standard PS4 graphics, so clearly they've done something right here. I won't bore you with the jargon because, well, I'm not sure I completely understand it myself, but the system is using a cutting-edge upscaling system. It's a 4x4 checkerboard and it allows developers to construct a 2160p 4K frame buffer from half the pixels, therefore enabling the PS4 Pro, I guess, to punch significantly above its weight with a fancy trick. Here's the amazing part though. Digital Foundry have reported that it's in fact one of a number of new custom features baked into the PS4 Pro's GPU, and because of that it comes with zero cost to game developers, so that means that they can utilise the upscaling with impressive, albeit different results between games with zero cost. That's pretty cool. Some of the games on display looked pretty awesome. The new Spider-Man, Horizon Dawn, Days Gone, Mass Effect Andromeda, I cannot wait for that game, Mass Effect 2, one of my favourite ever games. They all look stunning, but the main issue here is really how do Sony convey that to the consumer without them actually being able to see the difference in person for themselves? Showing off 4K visuals on a TV is just something that you really got to see for yourself. Don't expect all games to run at 4K though, and like I said, I think you'll see some native games, maybe less demanding ones or remastered older games, and then the majority will be actually upscaled. There's also another option here though, 1080p but with better performance and visuals. So what this new console could finally realise is new games running at 1080p 60fps as a minimum, with the added bonus of 4K support. Too many games these days are released on consoles and can't even manage 60fps and native 1080p, and because of that they look blurry on most people's TV screens. So what I want to see here is developers giving console players the option to select how they want to play their games on console, and it looks like that's exactly what's going to happen. If the developer chooses to add the support to the game and they can afford it and have the time and resources available, Rise of the Tomb Raider, for example, on PS4 Pro apparently has 3 different graphical options: a 4K option, a high frame rate 1080p option, and a high fidelity 1080p option. And that means that the gamer can pick what they want when they play this game. You might prefer better visuals and lower frame rates, or do you prefer the opposite? And that's what I want to see more developers doing. I did read though that in multiplayer games, the frame rate will be locked to the lowest version, i.e. if the game runs at 30 FPS on the standard PS4, let's say like Destiny, then you aren't going to be able to run the game at 60 FPS in multiplayer and gain an advantage. That sucks in my opinion, but I understand why they'd want to keep the playing field fair on console. The reality here is though that we could see old games play better if the developer wants to do it. Any game that you already own will run on the PS4 Pro, but it's up to the developer if they want to go back and patch in support for the extra power of the PS4 Pro. There was also a new TV technology talked about quite a bit called HDR. It's the ability for your TV to display a wider and richer range of colours, much brighter whites and much deeper, darker blacks, more detail in the lighter and darker areas basically. I've seen it in person myself, and in my opinion it's a cool technology that gives video games and movies a more dynamic and vibrant look, and the PS4 Pro will fully support it assuming you've got a TV that has it. From press who've seen it working on the PS4 Pro at the event last night, they say it's just as impressive as the jump to 4K. But the problem is, again, how do you show that off and prove it to people on their normal TV screens and monitors viewing on a 3500 bitrate Twitch broadcast? On the stream, yeah, you could see some improvements, but I think it's exceptionally hard to sell that to a consumer. Hey, look at these brighter colours. If they saw it in person, then yeah, they might be blown away by it, but it's not an easy thing to show off via a presentation or marketing campaign. There's also another issue here. Sony spent a long time talking about HDR and the PS4 Pro, but the truth is that HDR is being patched into all PS4s and not just the Pro, so it's not really clear if the Pro will have an enhanced version or something to set it apart, but regardless, you're going to be getting HDR no matter what PS4 version you own, assuming again that the developer wants to use it. On-demand streaming video is also something that Sony were highlighting. 4K Netflix, 4K YouTube, as well as HDR versions of the new TV shows on Netflix, all great, but with one glaring omission which honestly I can't wrap my head around: no support for 4K Blu-Rays. Sony were one of the investors in Blu-ray technology, and even the new Xbox One S has 4K Blu-ray support, and that isn't even the upgraded Scorpio console that we're expecting to get next year. I can't decide if Sony made the decision that digital media is much more important, or if it was a cost issue, keeping the cost down, or maybe they just lost the plot. But either way, pushing 4K media, 4K TVs and not allowing your users to play 4K Blu-ray seems like a pretty big omission to me. On the flip side, in an article on The Guardian today, Keith Stewart interviewed Andrew House, who's the head of Sony Interactive Entertainment, and he stated that there's not enough consumer interest in 4K Ultra HD discs to support the format on the new PlayStation 4 Pro. He goes on, "Our feeling is that while physical media continues to be a big part of the game's business, we see a trend on video games towards streaming. Certainly with our user base, it's the second biggest use case for people's time on the system, so we place more emphasis on that area." Maybe he's got a point. Pretty much all of the content I personally watch at home is streamed on Amazon, Netflix and Google Play. I only buy Blu-rays very rarely, and the ones that I purchase are the classics or box sets or movies that I really like. But I still think it's a big omission and a bit of a bummer. If 4K Blu-rays do take off and 4K TVs start selling like hotcakes, you have to admit that the new Xbox One S becomes much more of an enticing proposition, because as far as I can tell as of today, it's the cheapest 4K Blu-ray player on the market, as well as being a games console and entertainment platform. So, in conclusion, the PlayStation 4 Pro. Overall, while it doesn't seem that lots of games are going to be running in native 4K, it does sound like the upscaled visuals are definitely a big upgrade over the current PS4 model. Very impressive by all accounts from the events yesterday, and with the addition of HDR, it could make that visual jump quite significant. That being said, there are a few points to make here. Firstly, it's not just the PS4 Pro that you need to take full advantage of these new features. You'll of course need a 4K TV and an HDR ready one at that if you want to get the best experience, and that of course all adds up. It's expensive, it isn't cheap, and I don't think many people can afford all of that stuff. Also, you may be forgiven for just hearing upscaling and thinking it's just not worth it, but the reality is that the system is very impressive. Even games at 1080p will run at higher settings, texture detail detail, lighting, shadow quality effects, and I think people will definitely need to see it in person for themselves before they make a proper judgment. And that's about it for today, folks. As always, thank you very much for watching. Do let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, a thumbs down, and I'll see you in the next one.